Hi guys, it's Joey and this is the witchy vlog for the Witchling luck. Just to quickly recap on the meanings. Think lucky and you'll be lucky. Positive attitude, integrity, patience. If you want a fuller meaning of the card itself, then that would be at the beginning of the week. So, there had been a lot of crows and a lot of crow imagery to do with birch trees in the last few days. I looked for crows in the rain pictures and I was truly happy to see the rain, and the first image that sprung forth was the birch tree. I saw two on a birch tree in real life, but in truth there were hundreds of them everywhere we went, in the fields, in other trees. I quite frequently saw two flying overhead together. There were two the other day swooping around a horse chestnut tree in the village, and when we saw loads on a telegraph pole, two at a time would swoop down. In the fields yesterday, two flew overhead and seemed to dance in spirals, swooping, dancing in the mist. Twos and similarly birch trees are about the duality and about beginnings. They're also associated with high priestess energy, sort of controlling your own destiny, controlling your own fate. Every time you feel like you're breaking a rule, ask yourself who gave you that rule. Do it, girl. Remember that wherever your heart is, there you will find your treasure. Live beautifully, dream passionately, love completely. Wild Woman Sisterhood. You are exactly who and what and where you are supposed to be, and you are lovely. Wild Woman Sisterhood. People need to be encouraged. People need to be reminded of how wonderful they are. People need to be believed in, told that they are brave and smart and capable of accomplishing all the dreams they dream and more. Remind one another of this. I am that girl. Be a warrior, not a warrior. I am that girl. When words are both true and kind, they can change the world. Buddha. So, the thing that a lot of the quotes that resonated this week have in common is it's about attitude, and it's about how you interpret situations, it's about how you engage with situations. There is a fair bit of the diary, as ever, that is private and it will not get read, so I'm jumping about a little bit just to explain the pauses, I guess. An art picture that really spoke to me this week was shared by the Coven of Caradwyn, connected a lot of the imagery I've been seeing lately. There is a blissful crone smiling, eyes shut, with a pearl spiderweb headdress, atop which a raven skull, flowers, pentacle and moon sit. On her head sit a raven, a peacock and a white owl. The peacock tail actually has open eyes painted into it. There's a scarab beetle at her neck, and her hair silver is braided and contains stars that forms the triquetra trinity, as well as the flowers of life. She is truly awake and at peace within the universe. There has been a lot of imagery surrounding birds this week. Ravens and crows being at the fore, of course, with Morrigan and my connection to her. But there has been a lot of animals of air around. There have been symbols of air everywhere. There have been peacocks, there have been owls everywhere, there have been dragonflies. It's really late for dragonflies, and there are some huge dragonflies in the garden right now, They're like out the back, out the front, they're everywhere, and they're like protective circling around the house. It's incredible. So when we're seeing creatures of air, we have to stop and think, what is this telling us? And the thing with creatures of air is they can have quite different meanings, but they all tie into lifting up, and that could be to do with your way of thinking. You can only fly if you leap. Otherwise you will always be on the floor, you'll always be grounded, you'll always be afraid. Dragonflies, which I'm surrounded with, are air and water. I was watching Laura Daligan's video about them, and they live underwater for most of their life before transforming and becoming airborne. And there's something in there about the way in which we engage with our emotions and holding on to things we're afraid of rather than allowing ourselves to fly. And you have to have in your mind the what you want to achieve and then set out to achieve it, I think, is what we're going for. Both Morrigan and Brigid were actually present to help with healing. I had a strong, powerful meditation with both Brigid and the Morrigan. Brigid came at the Morrigan's behest. Nothing to do with me. I was sick. And took care of me. It was incredibly moving, incredibly beautiful, and a lot of messages this week have actually come in dreams, and not all of them have been mine. We've had my partner dreaming about what people were up to in a negative spin. I've had people come to me this week with messages from all over the place. People telling me things that I need to know, things I need to hear, things I need to consider. And this is associated very much with ravens, crows and creatures of air. Wings, words, messages. The way words fly from our mouth, and we cannot take them back, because once we put them in flight, that's it, they're gone, and they have great power. So this week has been a lot about receiving messages and listening to people. For Wildness I Strive, a poem by Tara Isis Juris. I am a wild woman. I love myself. I embrace myself. I praise and encourage myself. I trust the deep wisdom pouring out of me. I let life unfold naturally. Walk my path with dignity and listen to the precious whispers of my soul. I am a good woman. I am bad. I am soft. I am mad. I am pure. I am chaos. I am gentle. I am fierce. I am mild. I am a wild child. Nothing can tame me. As I am a wild woman, I dance to the beat of my own drum. At night I howl to the moon. And as the wind takes my sorrows, I let the wolf moon, connecting with our elders, reflecting on life. Nothing can destroy our purity, for wildness I strive. Oh, there's a mouthful in there. There's been a lot of wolf imagery this week as well. And wolf imagery is one of those really interesting things because it has a duality on it, which ties back to the number 2 and the duality. Because you have this image of the lone wolf and yet you have the image of the pack. And it's been an interesting duality this week about considering when you're best being a lone wolf, when you're best in your pack, who your pack is, the truth and honesty residing in what is actually connecting you to people. Wolves are teachers, of really spiritual teachers as well, so they can often appear and help guide us when we're sort of questioning spiritual matters, connecting with other people. Wherever crows are, there is magic. They are symbols of creation and spiritual strength. They remind us to look for opportunities to create and manifest the magic of life. They are messengers calling to us about the creation and magic that is alive within our world every day and available to us. And of course I've already spoken about the dragonfly. Then there's a lot of information which I've already shared most of with regards to the magic of ravens. I am going to repeat this line because I like this line, and it's from the movie Excalibur from 1985, I believe, so it's as old as I am. Yeah. Remember, there is always something cleverer than yourself, and Merlin, or Talzin, says that in the movie. Right, so I wanted to really sort of pull that out because there's been a little bit of an under echo of ego and warning against sort of what egotistical behaviour would be negative and detrimental to one's sense of self, balance, and of course luck, which is basically an outward echo of who we are, and our attitudes towards things. There is always balance to everything, and the balance is in constant flux. This is how I understand the energies of the world, of life, of death, of rebirth. It's very simplified, but there is a constant flux, but there is a constant balance. And so we have to be careful when we are seeking out messages from all angles, be it the divine, be it from other people, etc., what we take on and then what we do with it. There's an element of not becoming overly prideful about who we are, what we learn, what we engage with, and making sure that we are acting in terms of the higher good, the right path. And by the right path I mean versus wrong, not any hand paths. I'm talking about doing what is right versus what is easy, which is something I talk about all the time. Not to judge, and yet not to be a doormat, not to blindly refuse to see the messages that are right there in front of us. This has been a week about messages, and again, choice with which messages you engage with, what messages you ignore or block or laugh off because it's not worth your time and it's just trying to pull you down. There's been elements of shadow work coming through this as well, of course, with ravens and crows and things. And that sort of ties into the idea of what we are afraid of, being afraid to fly, like I earlier mentioned. And the shadow work to do with the ravens sort of brought up these ideas. Fear of others' intellect, or being made a fool of, or things of that nature. Now, that's different to deception. Although that is obviously something else that, as human beings, we're quite naturally afraid of others' deception to whatever end, negative ends. But it does come from a place, if we're not careful, of pride. There is, again, this balance between protecting yourself and creating boundaries and barriers. There has been, at the tail end of this week, some messages about boundaries and what we allow. And Nadia put it best when she said that we create our own sacred space wherever we are. And that includes being online, on Facebook, on whatever. And the boundaries that you put in place are not necessarily about other people, they're about you. And if other people are acting out of ego for not being allowed in certain boundaries, then that has to be something that they examine. And whom you allow into your space, what messages you allow into yourself, affects who you are, affects the balance of, psychological balance, emotional balance, all of it. It's all interconnected. And then there has been elements of being afraid of the unknown, the unseen, the question mark over the future has been another theme, thread weaving through this week. Not necessarily of mine, it's just something I have picked up on and noticed for a few different people, and that's uncertainty about the future. I did mention that the first relationship I had with any animal, any visual animal that turned up in meditation, was the wolf, which is true, and that ties back into the wolf was the first teacher I ever had, and there were 3 of them. There still are 3 of them, they're still here. And the symbiotic relationship they have with crows, and this sort of circle of learning, this cycle that we go through in life. And some cycles are smaller and some cycles are bigger, but no matter what happens, we won't be the same for going through them. And we cannot remain the same. If we remain the same, we remain stagnant, we poison ourselves, we don't allow the fresh air in, I guess is what the imagery with the birds would be. We don't allow ourselves to push through who we were and grow into who we are going to be. And we need those cycles of life, death and birth in our everyday life to let go of things that no longer serve us, to understand that who we were is not who we are and is not who we are going to be. There's a thread connecting all of it, but it's not stagnant. Flowing, movement, air. So then there are a few crystals which you have already seen on 2 videos. So there was dark green Vesuvinite, bloodstone, atacamite, labradorite, rhyolite, so many lights, pyrolusite, tanzine aura quartz, and was that it? Yes. And there is a similar thread here. You've seen the Triskel crystal grid if you watch my videos. And they are all interconnecting with the idea of psychic gifts and intuition, which pulls on that unknown. Banishing fear and insecurity, which sort of getting rid of the fear of the unknown. Giving courage to us to accept our situation and seek change, and courage to transform ourselves, as well as keying into our higher purpose, our soul purpose, and that's kind of been the tail end of the week. Courage is cool, do it girl. What is courage? Now, I may be preempting myself here a little bit. I'm wondering if this is going to be next week. I haven't picked next week's card yet, so I can't tell you. But in the tail end of this week, there's been feelings about what is courage, what is strength, what are these things, and what are they not. Now again, this is going to be one of these, they're power words to invoke a reaction from people which is going to be entirely their own, and what we understand as being something which is a construct, which is an abstract, is different from what other people think of it. So personally, courage is, for me, to be the lone voice for what is right when all around you are seeking to clique up, to pack mentality in the negative form, the sort of sheep over a cliff type mentality. It's standing up for what is right, or standing up for people who cannot stand up for themselves, even if it means doing it alone. And this sort of ties into the personal boundaries thing. I'm going to read this quote about the personal boundaries. Clutter is not just physical stuff, it's old ideas, toxic relationships and bad habits. Clutter is anything that does not support your better self. Eleanor Brown, with 2 N's. There was another image which I really enjoyed this week, which was Eye of a Druidess, which was the infinity loop above a snake coiling around an egg. And there has been a little bit more snake imagery going through the week in a very subtle way. It's not been quite as abrupt as last week, which I was having trouble with last week because I was not very well. And it's sort of snuck its way in like a snick. And it's still there. It's still all this transformation, which, you know, snake and egg. It's all about transformation. It's all about upcoming birth. My thought of the week was yesterday. Thought of the week, or thought of the day, but thought of the week for this sake. Then act like it. And that kind of full circle to the whole thing about words and attitude and us being our words and things is nothing unless we act like it. I can say I am the most extraordinary fisherman this side of the West, I don't know. And it doesn't mean anything because I'm not acting like it. And the final quote is actually from Pirates of the Caribbean. There's a matter of luck in all. And when I first got this card, that was the first thing that went through my head. There's a matter of luck in all, friend. It's when they break out of prison and Jack's stuck in the jail and then has to make his own way out, which he actually does with help from Orlando Bloom. So the whole thing about that is, you know, luck is how we perceive, but I think that the idea of luck is actually one of these human constructs to better understand the universe around us, and actually flows through everything, and it's actually more about who we are, about what we say, about how we act, rather than this idea of this universal energy of luck, which is good or bad depending on random chance. I don't think the universe is as random as that. And this may be me seeking to make sense of things, and perhaps it is just luck is a random thing and I'm completely wrong. But I honestly think that there is an element of luck in all, which means there is an element of who we are in luck, and how we behave, how we speak, how we act, how true we are is going to affect our personal, inverted commas, luck. So that's going to be it for this video diary for this week. Many blessings.